everyone. Welcome to the Naughty Shaman podcast. I'm your host, Natalie Carlisle, and I can't wait to dive in to a world where the sacred meets the wild and keeps things totally real. In each episode, we are going to dive into what it truly means to live a radiant life that is unapologetically real. And if you're ready to get started, so am I. Hey, it is me, Natalie Carlisle. Welcome to the Naughty Shaman podcast. And I am so glad that you're here. It's such a pleasure to connect with you. And I've been doing this series about the archetypes that come out of Peru. And we're going to have a little archetype series every now and then. These happen to be the Peruvian archetypes, and I'm having so much fun diving into the details of these things. These are things that we talk about in Dharma school. We touch on them, but we don't dive deep. And so it's really nice to have the time and space to tell these stories about the amazing archetypical world of the Peruvian jungle. So thanks for joining me. Today in this episode, what we are going to be talking about is the serpent. And I love the serpent. Although I have to say, I have stories about the serpent that I'll tell you, but I did not always love the serpent. I, like many people, kind of was judgy. I was a judgy bitch with the serpent. I'm not gonna lie, because I was like, oh, the serpent, that's the one that tempted Eve. It's a sign of the devil. And oh my God, it's evil. Serpents are bad. They're evil. Like every movie you ever watched, it's like the most horrifying, terrible creature on the planet, right? At least those are some of the stories that many of us were told in our culture here in the West, and also in the Judeo-Christian, Abrahamian religious backgrounds. Then we have definitely heard stories of the serpents, and just saying the word serpent has a lot of baggage to it. And so I am here to tell you a little bit about our friend, our little legless friend, the serpent, and all of the magic and beauty that this archetype can hold for us, and all the wisdom that it has to share. And so I'm excited to talk about the serpent. I could never own a serpent because those suckers get big, and then like they release them in Florida and bad things happen. So I love them from afar. And I did get to see an anaconda, a big, fat, black anaconda in the jungle in Peru one time. And it was a thing of beauty. It was mesmerizing, like hypnotic. It was on the path, and it was about this big around. Like, I don't know if you're listening on Spotify, if you could hold the fingertips of your fingers and your thumb together and put them, it was about that big around. It was a fat, juicy, big, blackish anaconda. And we were walking by this swamp at the place where we were hiking, and it just slithered slow and calm as a cucumber right in front of us. And our guide took a few steps towards it, and it kind of looked at it like, are you for real? And just kept on going its merry way. Didn't even blink an eye, didn't get stressed out, just kept going the way it was going towards the water. So pretty cool stuff. When we're talking about the archetype of the serpent, one of the things that you'll hear is this phrase called Sachamama, and Sachamama in the language of the Q'ero in Quechua, it means like water boa, really big fat water boa. So not just a little wee snake, but Sachamama, like a snake, a big one. And so snakes have been around in my world for a long time. And I have my brother to thank for this, like confusion and terror of snakes, because when I was small, he's 11 years older than I am, because I told you about that story. It was like he was born, my mother had 9 miscarriages, and then I was born. And so there's this gap in between us. And so for me, he was like, I don't know, a god. He was like more than a big brother. He was so old and so cool, and skateboard. He could do handstands on skateboards. Like, he was the coolest dude. So anything he told me to do, I would do. Like, I remember one time he was like, let's catch a bunny rabbit and then we'll have a pet bunny. And I was like, that is like the coolest idea I've ever heard in my whole life. And I was about 3 years old. And I remember he put a box with a stick on it. You know how you do, like, you're going to put the food underneath the box and then lift up the box, put the stick on it. And then when the bunny goes in the box, you pull the stick and the box falls on top of him. So we built one of these magical traps out in the backyard in Maryland when we lived there. And he took the string for the stick and he put it through, he ran it into the house, through the sliding door, and then shut the sliding glass door. And he said, now sit here and wait for the rabbit to come. And I did. I held on to the end of that string. I was like a mighty 3-year-old hunter waiting for this rabbit to go into the box. And what I realized now in hindsight, my brother was having me sit there for an hour, if not longer, so that I wouldn't bother him anymore. It was such a good big brother tip. I didn't even see it at the time because I was so little. So this is my relationship with my brother. And so we were outside one day, running around in the cornfield, and he was skateboarding with his friends, whatever. And everybody was kind of drinking out of the hose next to our house, like you did. And my brother said, "Hey, Nat, come over here." And we had this huge cherry tree by our house, and there was a porch swing that my dad had connected to it. So it was like a cool place to hang out. It was shady, cool. So I went down to this tree, and behind the tree, he was standing there, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to give you a boost. And I want you to just look inside this like knot of the tree and see what you see. Like, it's a big enough knot in the tree, like where this big hole had rotted out." He said, "I think you can fit inside it because you're littler." And I was like, "I am little. Maybe I will fit." And I felt like I was doing my brother a favor because he couldn't fit into the tree. So he picks me up and he gets me like right on the edge. I'm sitting inside this little tiny nook in this tree. And you'll never guess what was in there. Like 30 little baby black snakes hatching out of shells and their mama. And I screamed my full head off. And I don't know if I fell out of the tree or if he took me out of the tree or how I got into the house, because I was terrified. I could feel them like squiggling underneath me for days afterwards. And so me and the serpent didn't always have such a great relationship. In fact, I remember early in my training, I was doing a journey that Alberto Violdo was leading in one of our weekend or week long courses that he did. And, we were going to go visit our power animal or something like that. And it was the first time I journeyed in a while with someone guiding me. I'd been doing it kind of on my own, like a rebel, but this was the first time with somebody guiding me. And I'm like, I know my power animal, it's a wolf, duh. Like, I've always loved wolves. I draw pictures of wolves, I have pictures of wolves, like I totally relate to the wolf. So I already know my power animal is going to be a wolf. So I go on this journey with this arrogance, like, whatever, I already know what I'm going to get. And in the journey, you look behind your shoulder and see two eyes, and I'm looking for my wolf like, "Hey buddy," and he wasn't there. And I'm like, gives. The only two eyes I could see were these tiny, tiny little eyes in this green tree. And then I could see this little green body slither out of there. And it was a green mamba, a snake, and hanging in a tree. And I was like, this cannot be my power animal. Please, please, oh, please. Like with the sorting hat with Harry Potter, I'm like, please, please don't let this be my power animal. I'm looking around for anything cool, like a bear or a lion or something. Green mamba. So then the journey ended, and I was so distraught because in my head, what I had going on was, that proves it. I'm evil. I'm a detriment to the human race. I knew it. I knew it. Like, I knew it. I'm cursed. There's clearly something wrong with me. I went down this whole negative train of thought, and my mentor at the time, Deborah, came over to me. She could notice my distress, and she said, "What's going on?" I told her about my journey, and she said, "Well, why don't you spend some time learning about a green mamba and and see if spirit's giving you like a little bonus information about who you are, the instincts you're reclaiming right now. And I was like, okay, Deborah, I'll do it, but I don't like it, but I'll do it. And what I learned about the green mamba that has stuck with me ever since is 20 years ago, everything that stuck with me about this green mamba was that it was gorgeous and it blended into this tree so perfectly. And when I did research on this snake, I realized that they are so intelligent and smart and conservative with their energy in terms of how they hunt. And they're totally different than their kind of cousin, the black mamba. So a black mamba is much bigger snake, and it is deadly as well. But those things are clocked at like high speeds. Black mambas will run even though they don't have legs. They will run and they will hunt your ass down and kill you. So they're pretty fast and aggressive snakes if you get into their territory. Otherwise, they don't care. But a green mamba is not that aggressive. What a green mamba will do instead to hunt is it will hang delicately in a tree and blend in perfectly and be very still and patient. And when a little frog goes hopping by, just grabs it and eats it up. And that was like a revelation for me because I had been living life like a black mamba. Like if I wanted something, then I'd hustle and I'd go for it and I'd do everything and I would be fearless and I'd pull out the stops. And, if I wanted to date someone, I'd go and hunt them down. If I wanted a job, I would go and hunt it down. If I had a project deadline, I would run until I couldn't breathe anymore, until I fell down, trying. And I was working and living life in this way. And when I learned about the characteristics of this green mamba, of their patience and their grace and their softness and their elegance, I was dumbfounded. And I called Deborah and I said, I think I know why the green mamba has kind of come to work with me in this moment. And this was the beginning of the shift in my relationship with the archetype of the serpent. I started to realize that the stories that I'd been told and inherited through my culture were not necessarily true in every culture. And in fact, the archetype of the serpent is revered in ancient Egyptian archetypical information and symbolism because it represents healing, great healing energy. And these symbols from ancient Egypt are actually still in our reality today. In ancient Egypt, I can't remember the name of it, but we refer to it often as the caduceus. But there is a symbol of the staff of Ra, which is the staff of light. It's connected to the sun god of Ra, but the staff of Ra, it is pictured with often a white serpent and a black serpent representing complementary opposite natures, complementary opposite energies, masculine, feminine, dark and light, heavy and light, night and day. And these energies of the caduceus wind up the staff of Ra, intersecting 7 times, and you'll see them in this way. Now, what's gorgeous about this is that if you live in a city where you might have an ambulance or a fire truck, then often you will see the symbol of the staff of Ra on medical automobiles and on medical buildings because it's still used today. The American Red Cross, I think, has a little version of this going in there, but what it is it's the remnants of this ancient symbol of union and of healing. And in fact, in yogic traditions, they talk about the central channel, which they'll refer to as nadis, and N-A-D-I, not N-A-U-G-H-T-Y, not like our favorite naughty, but N-A-D-I. And so this Ida and Pingala nadi in yogic Hindu traditions is woven up the spine like two serpents and intersects 7 times at the chakras, at the center points of the chakras. Cool, right? And this is often what people refer to as kundalini energy, is these sleeping serpents that are kind of sitting down near the first chakra, right in the pelvic bowl. And that as we do our healing work and awaken, then this kundalini energy rises. The serpents rise out of their slumber and take us through higher levels of consciousness. So you can see just even through these stories that the serpent, the symbol of the serpent and the archetype, is truly powerful and ancient, and referred to as the great healer, that symbol. So I'm going to share with you 3 characteristics that we can learn from the archetype of the serpent. And what the archetype of the serpent really helps me with is getting shit done. So we're really going to take a look at this archetype and understand why it has stood the test of time, why it is a symbol for healing, and it's also a symbol of just moving forward and getting it done, whether it's your healing work, whether it's your paying your bills, whether it's the details of life, but it's about moving forward and getting it done. And so let's dive in. So, a couple fun facts about serpents is that, obviously they live very close to the earth. There is not another creature on this earth that lives as close to the earth as the serpent. Its entire belly is on the ground, and it doesn't have legs. And it has these cool specialized scales that move with their musculature to move them forward. Snakes cannot go backwards. Fun fact, isn't that cool? Like, they don't. Like a hummingbird, it'll go in all the directions, like we talked about in another podcast. But the archetype of the serpent is symbolized by forward motion. And if you think about a serpent, like if you lay on the ground like a serpent, you got your whole belly on the ground, you cannot, if you keep your chest on the ground, you cannot really lift your head up too much. Like maybe you can kind of arch up like a serpent sometimes does using your back muscles, but that's not how they spend most of their time. Most of the time, the serpent is spent belly to belly, nestled down in to the earth. And if you lift up your head from that vantage point, you can see that really your perspective is pretty narrow. You can't see behind you. You can see out of the peripheral vision a small bit, but that your focus is right here, right in this realm. And in terms of long, far reaching vision, you don't have much access to that. So, one of the gifts of the spirit of the serpent is that you can look at what is the next right thing in front of me, the next right thing, the next right thing. And you just keep moving one step forward from the present, one step forward from the present, one step forward from the present. The gift of this way of moving through the world is in not stressing yourself out with the gigantic overwhelm of the great big future that is unknowable. So we get to just drop into right now. What is the next right thing for me? What is the next aligned step I can take? What is the next aligned step I can take? And that's one of the powerful gifts of the serpent, is that we don't have to worry about this long-reaching vision, and we have permission through this perspective to take care of what needs to be taken care of immediately. What's right here, right now? Do I need to pay this bill right now? Yes or no? Do I need to eat right now? Yes or no? Do I need to hug a child right now? Yes or no? Do I need to finish this project right now? Yes or no? It becomes very manageable when we embody the archetype of the serpent. So, this is one of the gifts of the serpent is that we get to connect to our gut instincts and just focus on the next right thing. And I don't know if you can feel this when I say that phrase, just focus on the next right thing. And that wisdom is found in many, many books. But there is a peace, like a an exhale that sort of comes over my physical body that feels very freeing. And that's it. Which brings me to my next point about the archetype of the serpent. So the serpent is super powerful for many, many reasons. But another reason why they are so awesome is that they shed their skin. So when you think about a serpent, or let's back this up, backing up the bus. Let's back up the bus and think about being human. So when humans grow, we have a skeletal system inside that grows as we take in nutrients, and it's just a natural progression of growth for humans. And then our skin, when we're young, is really filled with moisture and collagen and all these magical things, so that the skin begins to stretch out as we grow to wrap around our skeleton. Serpents do not have the same kind of skin. They have a totally different thing going on. So as a serpent grows, little baby serpent, they're so cute. They grow up too, little babies. They grow up and be teenage snakes. And when they become teenage snakes, they start to grow. I'm going to talk you through this whole scenario because I think it is so fascinating. And think of the symbolism here. So this serpent begins to grow and starts to get uncomfortable in its own skin. Literally uncomfortable in its own skin because its skin is getting tighter because the skin is not growing. So it just wakes up in the morning, it's kind of irritated because he doesn't fit in his skin anymore. So everything he experiences is irritating. Like the other snakes at the bus stop are pissing him off, and there's no food when he gets home from work because he's kind of pissed off, and the sun isn't hot enough, so he's kind of pissed off, and the water's not cold enough, so he's kind of pissed off. So there's this irritation that starts to come in because the skin does not fit any longer. The next thing the snake will do as it's getting ready to grow is it will feel all this discomfort, pain, and then it realizes, oh, getting ready to grow. I got to shed my skin. So its little serpent brain goes, yeah, we better handle this because it's the next right thing. So then the serpent starts banging his head on a rock, literally banging his head against a wall, like bam, bam, bam. And he's looking for a couple of little nooks and crannies in that stone or rock or twig where he can get his skin caught, so that as he begins to slither forward, the skin starts to peel off all at once. I know. Whenever I use the word skin and peel, it sounds disgusting, but really what a beautiful process if you think about it. Like here's this snake that's got this dull gray skin, and now he's finding a way to assist himself in stepping out of the old skin. So I often think of, if you're feeling in pain in your life, you're feeling uncomfortable in your skin, or you feel like you're banging your head against the same old wall, really what's happening for you is that you're getting ready to grow. You're actually getting called into growth, and you must grow. There's no going backwards, remember? So when you're in pain, when you feel like you're hitting your head against that same brick wall, and when you feel like you just don't fit in your skin anymore, you're getting called into growth. And there's no way out of it, my friends. There's no going back. No going back. You must keep going forward through that journey by any means necessary. Find the healing work that works for you so that you can begin to shed that skin and shed your past, shed who you have been, so you can step into a new way of being. What I find fascinating too about this process is that when a skin literally goes through this process, or when a snake literally goes through this process, skin covers its eyeballs. So his eyes get gray and cloudy, and he literally cannot see very well anymore. So, this is another clue for us mere mortals, us humans, that when we cannot see how the future, when we cannot see possibilities in the future, or we are confused about how is the future ever going to work out, or any of that, it's simply a sign that the skin or the way of being that we have been is just getting old. It's getting dusty and old, and we need to shed it off so that we can see with new eyes. And when a snake comes out of its old skin, it is like dazzling with new colors. Sometimes new patterns emerge over time as it grows and matures into its full self. And the other thing that happens when a snake comes out of its skin all brand new like this is it's extremely sensitive. So it can feel vibrations in the earth to tell it about prey, hundreds of feet away, and it can feel the sunlight deeper and feel through the side nostrils that it has here. It can smell and see and feel and sense on such a deeper level because of the freshness and the newness of the skin. And so this for me holds the possibility of, as we enter a healing process, as we enter personal growth as our journey, then when we reemerge, we might feel a little sensitive, and we'll have a higher sensitivity of feeling in all ways through our senses, like taste, touch, smell, sight, hearing, like our intuition, and also like our emotions. So our emotions will be more expressive, more readily available as a human after a period of growth. Isn't that fascinating? So the first lesson that we already talked about was that, serpents are close to the earth, and their perspective is about the next right thing, the next thing I need to survive, the next thing I need that's nourishing for me. And it's connecting us to our gut instinct and the next right thing. It releases us from the obligation of knowing the future, and there's a peace that comes with that gift. The second thing that we're talking about right now is this ability to grow, to know when it's time to grow, and to understand that we can release who we have been all at once. Right now. We can do it right now. I invite you to do it right now. Take a breath and imagine stepping forward or stepping out of or peeling off from head down like your old costume, the old avatar of who you have been being in the world. And invite yourself into a fresher, more updated experience of being you, right? Maybe the way you have been was getting dusty, it was getting old, it wasn't working anymore. Something wasn't working. And those are all clues. Your skin is tight, you're irritable, you're banging your head against the wall, you're in pain, you're suffering, you feel confined. That's all simply a sign that it's time to let go. Time to let go of something in the past, or a lot of things in the past, and step into a new way of being. In the West, this idea of like, well, how do we let go? It seems so difficult. And truly, letting go is as easy as, watching a leaf fall off of a tree. It just drops. It's not like a big 9-step process to let go. It is truly a surrender and a softening, and it naturally falls away. It's a surrender that it's time for it to go, and an allowing of it to fall away. And this is how we begin letting go of the past, right? So these are the two great gifts of the serpent, is that we know what the next right thing is, and we can learn when it's time to let go. When it's time to let go and step into something fresh and new with courage. The third thing that I love talking about these snakes is that, they're cold-blooded. They're not hot-blooded. They're not like Latina snakes or anything like that. They are like cold-blooded. They're not hot-blooded like the jaguar or the hummingbird or these other things that we talk about. They're cold-blooded, which, means that their temperature is regulated based on their environment. If their environment is warm, sunlit, then they are warm. If their environment is cold and dark, then they become cold. I don't know if they become dark. I haven't talked to the psychology of a snake before, but when it's cold, they get cold. And when it's warm, they get warm. And when it's hot, they get hot. And if it's too hot, they have to move. And if it's too cold, they have to move. So this idea of being connected to their environment so intimately is very, very powerful. And the idea of surrounding ourselves with people that are the right temperature, with experiences that are the right temperature for us to thrive. That's key. And that we get to regulate that. We have choice. If it's too hot in the kitchen, we can move into the living room. If it's too cold in the marriage, we can get divorced and find warmth in our independence. So we have an ability to interact and learn with our environment and declare that that is important. Our environment is a part of what makes us feel warm and what makes us feel alive. And it's a very important part of being human is where we choose to where we choose for our habitat. So what we choose for our habitat is very critical to our experience of life. And if our habitat that we are living in doesn't nurture our life, our vitality, our soul living, then we begin to sit still and be patient like that green mamba and start to assess without emotion. What is it that doesn't feel warm enough? What is it that feels too hot? Where might we move to make the temperature more suitable for who we are, for our growth, for our vitality, for our enjoyment of life? So I love this idea of having choice in our environments to regulate our temperature, to regulate our vitality at a soul level. I'm not talking at the mind level. That's an easy go-to because on paper, things look very logical and fit sometimes in our life, and yet our soul has gone cold. And I know many of you have had this experience where it should be the right thing for you. And there's something in the soul that doesn't align and it feels too hot or too cold. It doesn't feel right. And the serpent gives us permission to listen to that instinct of it doesn't feel right. It isn't the right temperature for us to thrive. And you might know that deep in your bones long before you choose to do something about it. And that's fine. But the serpent invites us into that deep knowing, that deep old knowing beneath the emotion, beneath the fear, beneath the suffering, beneath the sadness, beneath the grief of letting go, beneath all of that. There is a wisdom, a knowing that can occur at the level of serpent when we start to embody the sacred archetype of the snake. And so that's just a fascinating element to me about what we can drink from this well of this archetype for a long, long time. And in fact, another thing has got me thinking about this is that the other thing about the serpent being cold-blooded is that they're super chill, right? They're cool as a cucumber in most situations. They're used to operating at this coolness. And when it gets too hot, too heated, if you think about an emotional conversation, it gets too hot, too heated, they're like, yeah, I'm all set. And they're going to go back into a comfortable place. So being chill is actually a really helpful quality for us to start to embrace. And what the serpent can teach us here is that not every situation not every thought that you have requires an emotional response. Wait, what? Yeah. You do not have to apply emotion to every single situation. I'm going to say it again for the people in the back. Your emotional body, your emotional process, your emotional field does not need to get engaged in every single situation. The news would have you think differently. Social media would have you think differently. That I'm knocking papers off. I'm getting so passionate. But really, it's wild out there. Like every situation needs popped off. Like I posted a picture. Oh my goodness. On my Instagram, I was getting ready to go to Peru. I had been sneezing and coughing and generally messy. So I wore a mask because I didn't want to be like sneezing and snotting all over the people next to me. Plus, I hate getting sick. I don't want a cold. I don't want the flu. I don't want anyone else's cooties either. So sometimes when I fly, I like to wear a mask, especially if I'm feeling a little bit under the weather already. So I had my mask on and I'm like excited to go to Peru. I pop a selfie, didn't even think about it, but I had my mask on. But somebody I don't even know pipes in to my comments section all emotional about the fact that I have a mask on and science, says whatever. And I was just like, this a, a selfie of someone you barely know on Facebook or Instagram does not warrant an emotional response. Let's think about that. Does it? Does someone posting a picture of anything on social media warrant an emotional response from you? I can think of a handful of situations, certainly not every situation. So, Serpent gives us permission. When we embrace and embody this archetype, it gives us permission to take a step back, to take a step underneath the emotion and get low, and to get chill and to get grounded, belly to belly with the Mother Earth, and let life happen around us without getting emotionally involved in every single thing. As we mature as healers, as spiritual beings, we begin to understand at some point in the journey how valuable our emotional energy is, how valuable our love is, how valuable our time is, how valuable our space holding is. And we get like the serpent and we get very discerning about where we use it. Where do we apply the emotion? Where do we apply the time? Where do we apply the gifts that we have? And there are many situations that don't require our emotional efforts at all. Like it's okay. It's okay to not engage, especially when everyone else is engaging. I think about football. I like to watch football this time of year, although I couldn't tell you anything about any of the teams really, except for the Ravens, because everybody around here is crazy for the Baltimore Ravens. But in football, there's this whole thing about the JOP, the jump on the pile. And that's something that as we grow in our spiritual maturity, we can choose not to do. Everyone else is jumping on a topic and gnawing at it like a wild pack of hyenas. You don't have to engage in that. You can just slither on by, doing your thing, doing the next right thing, staying in your lane, doing your jam, staying in your little serpent view here. And I'll tell you, this is the perspective of getting shit done. This is the heart of it right here, is that if we get too lifted out and pulled into the emotional context of the world, of the collective, then we can get distracted. We get distracted, we can get chewed up, we can get spit out by that emotional machine that is generating all this fear. But when we learn how to duck underneath it, when we need to, then we just go the next right thing. Make this podcast, sit down, write that letter, make that graph, look at the finances, make the chart, set the goals, like do the next right thing, do the next right thing, stay in your lane and do the next right thing. That is imperative if you are a creator, if you are an entrepreneur, if you are assisting people in any way, if you have a job, if you have a family. Being able to access this archetype, this perspective state is so critical. because you don't want to pay your bills from an emotional standpoint. You don't. You'll run through the paper writing angry letters or writing sad letters or writing sad checks. And, it just something has to be done. You do it. You pay, boom, you go. You pay, boom, you go. It does not behoove us to get extremely emotional about having to go to work in the morning, because guess what? You're going to work in the morning. You're going to get the things done that you promised, and you're going to keep those promises. It doesn't behoove me to get upset because I promised my daughter I'd put the coffee on in the morning. So I get up 15 minutes early to put the coffee on for us in the morning because that's what I promised to do. If she promised to do it, she does it. And she doesn't get sad or mad about that. She just does what needs to get done. It's just the serpent. Stay in the lane. So this is the final gift of the serpent, is this ability to duck underneath the emotion and stay in your lane. Get it done. Not every day do I want to, get up and make a podcast or write a blog or create a workshop or offer marketing material up. I'm not always inspired. I'm not always motivated, right? And what's beautiful about the serpent is that when I say, okay, today, 2:00, we're going to do the thing, I can sit and do at 2:00 the thing. Good, bad, or ugly, that podcast is going to get recorded. It's going to get completed. I'm not at the mercy of a mood of inspiration. I'm not at the mercy of my emotional being. So my emotions aren't dragging me around by the hair, leading the way. My whole self is getting to lead the way, set the goals, set the priorities, and do them. And I can do them with a ton of emotion. I can do them with no emotion. I can do it however I choose, because as we mature and become aware of these distinctions, we've talked so far about the hummingbird, we've talked about the jaguar, we've talked about the serpent. These are all different perspectives that we can take on throughout the day. It's almost like shifting gears in a car. Like if you drive manual, it's like you shift gears into first gear and then second and then third and then fourth. And a wise person is going to have access to several perspectives on every situation. In fact, one could argue that the more perspectives that you have on a situation, the more powerful you are, because you are not attached to only one way of seeing the world, to only one way of seeing yourself. You're creating space and possibility for reality. And that's extremely powerful. When we talk about manifesting our realities and doing these things, we cannot do it from only one perspective state because we're not seeing enough. We have to start to broaden our eyes and see that we can see things without any emotion. We can see things with incredible emotion of jaguar and this incredible way of connecting and weaving through the magic and all the other connecting points. We can also see then through the lens of hummingbird, where we have some flight, some elevation above the situation, and can begin to see the mythic story or the patterns that are unfolding. Having access to each of these things is critical. It would be zero fun to make love from serpent, like put this there, stand up, sit down, lay down, like no emotion, zero fun. But to put that jaguar energy in, add in the emotional connection, the intimacy, the magic, the between the worlds, the cosmic love, like that's just juicy stuff right there, right? It would be really boring to tell stories from the serpent level, but it would be really bad to pay bills and drive your car from the mythic, like, oh, money doesn't mean anything and it's not important. Like that's not going to get the bill written and paid. Like this detail needs to get taken care of. And so as we mature, we round out how we see the world and how we interact with the things that make life worth living. So I'm offering today the archetype of the serpent. And I I've really changed my tune about the serpent. So I'll tell you, there's this idea of that in some traditions in Latin America. There is this story about how this great cosmic serpent that there was a wavelength moving through space that was this great cosmic serpent, and that through this cosmic serpent was birthed the universe, and that this great cosmic serpent energy still roams through the cosmos, birthing worlds. So there's just so much tradition, legend, and history. Like we talked about the Egyptians and the Caduceus, there's such a rich history in the serpent. And so if you feel like your life could use a little more grounding, and if you feel that you're having trouble completing projects, if you feel like you are struggling with just getting shit done, then I invite you to literally lay on the ground in your living room and start to breathe, and imagine that you could just breathe with Mother Nature and slow down your breathing. And imagine, this is like when we were in preschool and we're like, everybody play an animal. Imagine that you're a snake kind of weaving its way through the grass. And at some point, just ask yourself, all right, Natalie, what is the next right thing to nourish your soul? And you're going to know, because there's a deep wisdom that comes out of the physical body when we're connected to the earth, when we're grounded. And Serpent has that power. It's so cool. And there are so many different kinds of serpents. Like since my green mamba experience, I have, of course, I fell in love with all of the Kill Bill movies, because Black Mamba, like she is the queen of the movie right there. The bride, Black Mamba. Like, she's got a lot of names in that movie. But Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2 is one of my favorite movies, even, despite the violence that's in there. It's great storytelling and amazing legends. And it's super cool. So, anyway, I've fallen in love with the serpents and the snakes, and learning about them and learning about the different characteristics and what they have to offer. So, I invite you to update your files, update your mental and emotional files about this really sacred animal that's been around a long, long time, that has evolved in the most peculiar of ways without legs. Like, how cool is that? And if you really want to kick, start looking up how a sidewinder lives. I'm just going to leave that nugget out there and let it kind of sit in the ether, because if you start watching videos of sidewinders and how they live, utterly fascinating. And now I can honestly say I consider myself so lucky and grateful that I have this serpent energy as one of the animals that I get to work with as an ally, as a spiritual friend, as an energetic possibility and reality. And I learned so much from that green mamba that I never really wanted, because I thought it meant I was poisonous, like the apple in the garden. And I've come to find out that it means that it's okay to live a life with ease. You do not have to try so hard. And what a sacred gift that is. So thank you, Serpent. Thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging in our community. I mean, that is the best thing. If I can invite you to do anything, it would be to just come on into our community, make comments on this video, on other things that are going on around us. We have some great workshops on our website. So go to naughtyshaman.com and you'll find out all the dates, times, and cool things that you can get engaged in for free, just to get connected to a community of people where we can explore our spiritual growth and our human growth. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Natalie Carlisle, signing off from the Naughty Shaman studios. And I love the Naughty Shaman because we like to keep the sacred a little bit wild, but totally real. Have a great, great evening. If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, we are so grateful. Please reach out to us. Let us know what topics you'd like to see covered in our future episodes. Get in touch in the comments because we love to hear from you. And you can reach us on social media.